Thanks for watching our podcast. Here at Spear Consulting, our services include business strategy and human resources consulting. In HR, we offer executive search, executive coaching, and work psychology consulting. Please visit us at spiritmco.com, where we fulfill our clients' dreams virtuously. Enjoy your show.
Welcome back to the Leading Virtuously podcast. Today on the show, we've got Trevor Bonat. If I just butcher that, we probably might have to start over. I realize that I probably should.
Don't worry about it. I've had much worse, so it's fine.
Yeah. So Trevor, who are you?
It's great to be on, Chris, to be this podcast with you. I'm the Chief Mission Officer for Trinity Health PACE and Trinity Health at Home. They're two continuing care business lines as part of Trinity Health, the broad Trinity Health healthcare system.
Sure. So when you help us, for those that are not within the healthcare industry, can you kind of like break that down of what that means so people can get a better sense of your business background?
Sure. So if you get ill and go to the hospital, you're going into an acute care setting. Mm-hmm. And then if you need anything after that hospital stay in your home, that's where Trinity Health at Home would take over and take care of your post-acute care needs. So, whether it be PT, OT, or, nursing care, those sorts of things. So that's one aspect of it. And Trinity Health PACE is a comprehensive, all-inclusive care program for underprivileged, frail elderly in the community. And about 30 states have PACE programs where we take care of all of the our participants' needs, whether it's transportation, healthcare, any dietary needs, rec therapy, those sorts of things. So it's a really innovative care program for the frail elderly. So I work in both of those. I work in the leadership teams of both of those business lines within the broader Trinity Health.
Got it, Trevor. So what is like the total employee count on both sides of those different divisions?
I would say we have probably among the two, probably around 3,000 employees.
Okay.
And then Trinity Health is a $17 billion organization with, tens and, I think probably closer to 100,000 employees at least. And so, it's a gargantuan. We have 94 hospitals, and across the United States. So it's a big healthcare organization. So
great. So Trevor, how did you get to the leadership position that you're in today?
So, Chris, in high school and college, I had kind of one thing in mind, and I went to Catholic high schools and Catholic high school and a Catholic college, and I kind of had one desire, really, and that one desire was to serve the greater community, mostly underserved populations, if I could, and participate sort of in something greater than myself. I mean, just to make it very simple. And so the easiest way for me to do that was to get into education. So I went to, I got a degree in classics and religious studies, and I became a theology teacher after I worked overseas for a couple of years in a volunteer program, and was a theology teacher for a number of years. I got a degree in school administration and a master's in theology, and eventually ended up being a principal of a couple different Catholic high schools, one in New Hampshire and one in St. Louis, for about 9 years, and loved the work, loved being in a leadership position in Catholic schools. And their Catholic schools are kind of like independent schools. They're run like businesses. So you have to worry about income. You have to worry about enrollment and tuition and, all those things that you would, there are a lot of analogies to a small business. And so I really love that side of the work, especially. Also in innovation, we did an incredible amount of work in innovation. So I was in Catholic school leadership, and I would have continued, but for a conversation I had with a friend of mine's wife who was in Catholic healthcare mission. And in hearing her talk about doing formation with adults, doing board formation, working with doctors and nurses on how they can deepen their understanding of the meaning of their work, and the expression of our core values through the work that they were doing. I was like, gosh, that sounds a lot like what I'm doing now. I think there's leadership so many times is just naming the good that you see in front of you, because people get used to just doing things. They think they do, which is great. It's very productive, but to think, reflect, and do, or think, do, and then reflect is something that's kind of broadly what mission does. And so we're able to enliven sort of our mission and core values, our North Star, where are we going, on a day-to-day basis. And whether that's in the boardroom or whether that's in a patient's room, that's where mission works. And so I was like, well, gosh, that sounds great. So I eventually, an opportunity presented itself. We were in St. Louis at the time. An opportunity presented itself to move back to the East Coast. And I got a job working for Mercy Health System in the Philadelphia area. We actually live in Maryland, but I got this great job in Philadelphia. So I commuted up and did the work that I'm explaining to you right now. So last summer, Mercy Health System merged formally with Trinity Health. And I, instead of having a regional role, I now have a national role. So I work with all of our healthcare agency, home health agencies across the country, and also all of our PACE centers across the country.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's a great story, and it's interesting how side conversations outside of the workplace could completely shift someone's career.
Isn't that incredible? It was literally a dinner conversation. So you got to pay attention to those things. So
I got two questions. One, I wanted to follow up with you about just the actual work itself, and then the other question I had for you, which is, I think your parents need a huge kudos and some affirmation here from the work that they did. I know in high school I was 100% self-focused, not thinking about the greater good at all. So just kind of curious, Trevor, why you were different in that regard.
Gosh, I don't, what I think it is. I think, that's a great question. And I've reflected upon that quite a bit. I mean, I'm no angel there, Chris. I had plenty of self-indulgent times in my life. But I'll say this. My dad was a small business owner. So he was actually a Pizza Hut franchisee. One of the original ones, actually. He tossed pizzas at the original Pizza Hut. And I grew up noticing the care that he gave for his employees. And almost, in Trinity, we talk about caritas, just like kind of overwhelming love, or overflowing love, and generosity. And that you can do that to a fault very easily in a business setting. But my dad was very much like that. So I think I learned a lot from him in that regard. I also went in Catholic schools. You have to do service. And so I really, really took to doing community service and Christian service through high school and college. So that was probably the other thing. But that was more of my volition than environmental, influences.
Well, thank you for affirming the work that my wife and I are doing with my two sons. We have been making it a mission to a couple times a year to have them go with us to go feed the homeless. And it's not like a structured ministry or nonprofit. It's just a matter of, having them help us pack some lunches. Then we head out into the city and pass out lunches to the homeless and care packages to them that include socks too. And that. Yep.
What are their impressions of that? I mean, what are their thoughts? On the drive home, I'd be fascinated. This is not part of this podcast, but it's a really interesting. I think kids really have really keen insights into things sometimes. I don't know. I didn't know if you had any thoughts.
They grew up into in a very affluent area, so that's something that for my parents, every Christmas we would go and work at food kitchens, which just takes you out of that little bubble that you're used to living in. And one really quick but really cute story was my 6-year-old had this balloon that he wanted to bring with us. And it's kind of like you're driving, the kids, hitting the balloon behind your head, and you're just like, but we let it, we let it slide or whatever. We were, just driving into the city. We're about a 30-40 minute drive. And after the second guy that we had given the care package to, Carter actually was like, he actually was like, "Excuse me, sir." And he gave the balloon to the homeless guy. And yeah, anytime, it doesn't matter what age you are, when you go off and see other people that are living in the conditions that some of the homeless unfortunately live in, it definitely takes you out of your comfort zone, and helps you realize, like, oh, there's more to life that's going on here than just how I, as you were saying, like all these indulgences that I have in my life and all these blessings, to just remember that there's other people out there, and to be able to, just open your eyes to the gratitude that you can have in your life.
Yeah, and I think that dissonance, there's dissonance that's built up inside our heads, and I know my daughters experienced this. There's like a tension between their life and the life that they see, and they know they can enter into on some level the lives of somebody else. They're like, wow, there's a real difference here, and it's not right. And that's that tension, that creative tension, is something that I really want to be fostering in our daughters. And honestly, I mean, to get back to mission work, that's really part of mission work, is raising the tension in a leadership team meeting. At times, honestly, like, I have a great leadership team, so like we don't really have to do this very often, but every once in a while, like, hey, gosh, you know what, this program might be at some tension with our core value of stewardship, or it might be a tension our core value of reverence, for example. So it doesn't happen very often, but I feel like that's part of our job, is to slow things down, gum things up a little bit, such that we're being very intentional, and to have those different perspectives, especially the perspective of those whom we serve, in healthcare. That's super important for us. So
yeah, that was that's starting to funnel into the additional question I had for you, Trevor, which is like, sometimes maybe outsiders outside of a Catholic or a religious health system may look at like a mission officer as like, well, that's a guy that like is in the corner, he prays before the meeting, and then the meeting starts and they just kind of sit there taking notes. But I was just kind of curious, like, if you could break down some like tangible work that you do in the meetings that encompasses the work as a chief mission officer. And you were telling us some of those, of like, if you're in a meeting and you're talking about operational planning, and they're starting to shift away from the values that you hold as the chief mission officer, to help them kind of like steer the ship back, and to bring that outside perspective.
Right. So certainly I do reflections. We have every meeting in Trinity Health, there's a reflection at the beginning of every meeting. And so I either do the reflection or I help organize those sorts of things. So that does happen. So I am the guy in the corner praying every once in a while.
Okay. That sounds like an awesome role too.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. Huh? Yeah, I'll take it. So here's some the other things. And gosh, maybe I should have thought about like what I did today. So HR. So, sometimes in human resource, when you're in human resources, you have to have difficult conversations with people, or there might be, how do you help coach somebody who might be struggling a little bit. So I work with HR, kind of hand in glove with HR at times, to help support colleagues who are experiencing difficulties or challenges. Or I've even done some kind of leadership or / executive coaching. I wouldn't say executive coaching. Oh yeah. With some folks that were leaders that were struggling. So I can come in and help be a reflective presence with them, and help them with some basic leadership challenges that they might have. So that's just an example. It's kind of in the HR realm. Also, we have community benefit in healthcare. We have as part of the ACA, we have community benefit monies that we need to spend for the benefit of that's what it says, for the benefit of the community. So I help our ministries, sometimes we call our organization ministries, engage the greater community. So there's a lot to be done in terms of public health and community health. So what I help do is help engage the greater community in helping sort of increase the baseline health of an area. So so we have a whole shop of community health and well-being office or department, and I help support that sort of work. So that might be another thing. Another thing is I get to do, a lot of our hospitals were founded by Catholic sisters, congregations. And if you ever want to read about some of the most incredible women in American history, you won't go very far without reading about a religious sister. And it's been a real joy working with them over the last few years, especially Sisters of Mercy in Philadelphia. So I help carry on their legacy. I help tell stories about the Sisters of Mercy, and then weave what we're doing now into these hundreds of year stories, really. And so when you're talking about efficacy, of a leadership team, when we know that we're doing something that has a 200-year history, and then in a Catholic perspective, a 2,000-year history, or actually from a Jewish perspective, a 5,000-year history. We're participating in something that's been going on for 5,000 years. This drama, that's been going on for 5,000 years. We work better. We work harder because there is a tangible purpose and an efficacy, like I said, for the work that we're doing. So, so that's some of the other things that I do. I work with spiritual care. So we think about chaplains. I help support chaplains in spiritual care. And then also I have an ethics function. So there might be an ethics issue that might be raised for me, and then I help either solve it or we take it to an ethics committee. So. And
do chaplains on the home care side, where does the chaplains kind of reside within the org chart for the business lines that you support?
So we have chaplains would be, I think the secular sort of side of that would be either a therapist or a social worker. Mm-hmm. So they work at least in our PACE centers, or our elder care centers. They work primarily with our participants because there's an incredible amount of social isolation and existential challenges that our elders are going through now, and doubly so because of COVID. So they really work in the trenches to help with that. They also have a secondary role in helping our colleagues who might be having difficulties. On the home care side, that's we don't have chaplains in home care. We have chaplains in hospice. So we do part of our home care kind of portfolio. A lot of our home care agencies have hospice, and there are chaplains that are in hospice. So, and that's all under that umbrella. So,
thank you. Trevor, what do you see as the future of Catholic healthcare in this country?
Well, I think the COVID is
COVID.
I know, huh? And I think I just this past week, Chris, I said, listen, I think we can finally start imagining our world post-COVID. Like, we have to be able to indulge in our imagination of what that's going to look like again. Mm-hmm. If we did that in November, I think it would have been a bad news. But I think it's a good thing now. We need to be imagining what it's going to be like with this behind us, because it'll come. So, but it's really rocked the healthcare industry. I mean, it's really evoked an incredible amount of innovation, but also it's exposed a lot of weaknesses in our healthcare system. And you want to talk about, I say 2020 gave us 2020 vision as to what our social and cultural and what have you problems are in the United States, and one of those is healthcare. So I do see they've been saying this actually for like 30 years, but the acute care hospitals becoming smaller, and more distributed out into the community. I mean, I think any one of us have been to a surgery center, instead of going to the big hospital, you go to a surgery center and then you're out at the end of the day. They're even doing hospital at home, where you can get certain procedures at home. So I do see, sort of a quickening of the contraction of acute care hospitals. And I'm in the enviable position and an increase in home care and innovative, models for the elderly or for the aging. I mean, I think there are 10,000 people turning 65 every day in the United States, and that trend's going to continue. And so the aging population is going to be the next wave of healthcare expenditures, for the next 20, 30 years at least, and we're not ready for it. I think 25% of Medicare spending happens in the last year of people's lives, and I don't think we have had conversations. This is kind of almost a side conversation, but a whole nother conversation, really. We haven't talked about death in the United States in a reverential, dignified, and loving way, the way we need to. And so I think hospice has been an answer, a way of accompanying people in their final chapter in their life. But that's a whole nother sort of thing that I think more from a cultural level than anything that we need to be addressing. But I'm in a position now where I want to be accompanying our organization to help us engage that next generation of healthcare challenge in an innovative, mission-driven way. So it's exciting.
Well, yeah, thank you for sharing. And Spirit Consulting, healthcare is one of the leading industries that we serve within. So thank you for the vote of confidence that two things: one, that COVID is on its way to being out the door, and then number two, that it's an industry that only continues to thrive due to the market dynamics around the aging population that needs healthcare, et cetera. So so thank you. So Trevor, in your day-to-day job, can you tell us a little bit about where virtue and business intersects for you?
Sure. It's fascinating. I was reflecting on the word virtue because it's in your mission, or it's in your literature. It's on your website and things like that.
Yeah, you can't
virtuous service, right?
Your Spirit Consulting without being slapped with the word virtue. So. And what's also funny too, sorry, I hate to cut you off, but like if some of my high school and college friends like saw that Chris Gomez is the virtue champion, they'd be like, but yeah, so sorry. Anyways.
No, it's very it's wonderful, and the cool thing is, we don't talk about it enough, right? It's an underutilized conversation. And I'm in the enviable position where it's my job to bring up virtue in our work on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. I'll say that the virtue that's really steered me the most in my role as a leader is justice. Mm. So we think about individual. I think in general in America, when we talk about we tend to talk interpersonally. We tend to talk about individual morality. We're the rugged individualists. We talk about my morality, your morality, what's right and wrong for me, what's right and wrong from your perspective. And we don't talk as much as corporately. So in my understanding, justice is really how do we live morally as a corporation, as a corporate body? What's that corporate body doing to live virtuously in the country? And the way we do it is justice. So giving people their due, paying a living wage, delivering the healthcare that people deserve, at a price that is reasonable, right? Caring for those most vulnerable, who don't have access to healthcare in a traditional setting. So
delivering upon the expectations that we set out into the marketplace of what we say that we're going to do, we're going to deliver upon this.
Yeah, I mean, another one of our core values is integrity, and that's you just defined it in exactly. We're going to say, well, we're going to do what we say we do, and have our actions, our words be backed up with actions. So, and to be, the more. So there's all kinds of healthcare, organizations, and in my opinion, as a Catholic healthcare organization, our goal is to burrow into that market niche and own it. We are the choice for healthcare that's full of dignity and personalization and reverence for the individual, and also we look outward into our communities to help elevate the health of underserved communities as well. So we've kind of had this dual role. We are going to do a great job with you while coming through our door, from a care perspective. Like, you're going to get the best care, but that's not where we end. That care is also part of a greater context, and that greater context is the health of our community. And so we have that both and that we play off of quite a bit.
Love that. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, and I think that also kind of just helps even provide even further kind of guidance and insight into both Catholic healthcare for people that are outsiders of that, and then also give even greater information about kind of like your role as a mission officer for an organization, mm-hmm. and the type of work that you're doing as well.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the questions that it just seems like it just keeps coming back is like in looking at your career in the way that you've been now and have gone into the pinnacles of the level that you can grow within it in both education and now in healthcare. Kind of just curious if you had the opportunity to meet your 22-year-old self, or the person that's right about to graduate college and head off into industry. Just curious, what coaching you would give that individual, give yourself.
It's a great question. I think so. A couple of things pop into mind. There is. I think there's a lot of questioning you have to do in your internal monologue to make sure that the voices in your head are actually true voices. Okay. So there are voices in our head. They say different things, you should do this, or let's go down this career path, or let's not go down this career path. More importantly, let's not do that. Right. And we got to just make sure that we're listening to the right voices. And I can tell you that a couple of the voices that were probably errant in my head was ambition, the voice of ambition. I think there's a place for ambition in a career path, but ambition can narrow a scope of a career. And I didn't really learn it until I switched careers to realize, wow, I left school education and went into healthcare, and all the trappings of education that I spent 20 years building in terms of a resume and next steps for me and competencies to run a school better and whoosh, gone. Right now I'm in healthcare, and there are a lot of crossover skills, but ambition would have narrowed my focus down a little too much. And so that's one of them. I think the second thing that I would, or second lesson that I would give myself is, reverence for the individuals along the way. I think I like the Tim Ferriss Tribe of Mentors, sort of type books and things like that, because I think interpersonally attending to individual relationships or something that I think I did a decent job on. But if I were to talk to my 22-year-old self, I think I would, now where I am now, I'd have a lot more relationships to draw on. And so I think that's probably the second thing would be to real attention to reverencing the individuals in my life and keeping up with them. So
it's it's interesting that you say that, because it's like I've found that there's a couple different themes that have been continuing to pop up with so many of the leaders that come on this, and I know that due to your work and prior conversations, like you were a Christian and a Catholic, and but there's been people that are atheists that come on the show as well. But what seems to just pop up is that like everyone has had people that mentors or guideposts that come into their lives to help them kind of like move them into the next place of leadership, or just to be there in their lives to guide them along the journey. And it's interesting that you bring that up about really like reverencing those individuals, to really appreciate those relationships, instead of always just kind of like, what is the next thing that I have to focus on? Because sometimes it's so easy to be like, all right, yeah, this person's like great, they've done great work for me, they like really care for me, but I've got this other stuff that I need to do, and then just kind of like let that fall by the wayside.
Right.
Is there like in particular for you, was there maybe relationships early on that you may have not been able to, I guess, appreciate that investment that person was making into your life?
I can't think of any relationships that I like particularly tanked or anything, Chris. But
I can think about 15 of them.
But I can say that I would have been helped along the way if I were, I think, in the consistency in maintaining those relationships, and actually, there are a couple older guys that I met along the way, and they weren't mentors or anything like that. I just kind of befriended. We, through any numbers of serendipity, we got together, and I call them every once in a while, like every 6 months, these older gentlemen who, they've lived their lives, they're retired. And so it's fun to like sort of have that, have that wisdom. I just wish that I would have had a more consistent relationship along the way, just check-ins and things like that. Because, now that I'm older, I'm kind of beginning to realize it's mutually beneficial. It's not just a one-way street in terms of what you get from a mentor relationship. So, I'm not saying I could offer very much, but I think the relationship is, as right, it can be really tough at the top, and it can be tough. And so to be able to engage people, can and would only be beneficial. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing as well. Was that, do we have a dog that is popping into the podcast?
Did he walk by? Yeah. He had surgery. He had surgery last week, and so he's been kind of needy. So he's been in my room quite a bit, just kind of looking at me and sleeping. So yeah, but he's doing fine. Yeah.
No worries. And I can't speak enough about how intentional fellowship is so critical. And it's definitely, it's going to do two things. One, it'll stretch you. If you choose to stay in a relationship and to have be honest in that relationship, and it's a good, healthy relationship, it'll definitely stretch you and make you grow as you share feedback with each other, as you rub each other the wrong way from time to time. And then the second thing, it's like all the other benefits that come with being able to leverage, both each other's wisdom that you've gained from life. And so, no, I love that. Thank you for sharing as well. So Trevor, how can people, sorry.
Just real quick. So to that point, on this coming Friday, we are having a Zoom reunion with, I think, probably 15 of us, 12 to 15 of us, who all served out in Micronesia together. We were all volunteers out in Micronesia together for 2 years. And we haven't gotten back together in, over 10 years. And so you want to talk about, that was a really intense fellowship experience that we had, in our early 20s. And I can guarantee you, because it happens every single time, once you experience a meaningful relationship, you almost can't go back. Like, you need to be challenged. You need to experience the care and the love of somebody else, and really almost more importantly, a community too. And so once you experience a community, a loving community that stretches you, that calls you to be your greatest self, gosh, it's hard to go back to, drinking on a Friday night, with going out, it's like that's a different, sort of thing. So, yeah. So sorry, that's just popped in my head as you were talking about it.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I'm hopeful for the person that hears this part of our discussion, that needs to hear that and can recognize, the genuineness that both of us are coming from as we talk about these loving relationships that stretch us versus, some toxic relationships. And as you're mentioning, like, when you get to that place and you go back to some of these dysfunctional, groupings of people, you're just like, what am I, this is not where I need to be.
Yeah.
and yeah, so that's good. So Trevor, yeah, I was going to ask you, how can people get a hold of the work that y'all are doing?
Well, you can see the work that we're doing. The websites are trinityhealthpace.org. It's pretty simple, or trinityhealthathome.org. So those are the two business lines or two ministries that I serve. I'm on LinkedIn and, knocking around the internet. So you can certainly get in touch with me probably through LinkedIn would probably be the easiest thing to do. So
great. Well,
okay.
We'll have all of those links into the show notes, and it was so good to be able to reconnect with you and hear some more about the work that you guys are doing, and appreciate you serving on the podcast as well.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was a real pleasure.
Absolutely.
All right. Wish you the best. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Hey, Chris here. Hope you enjoyed the episode where we discussed all things going bald. Just joking. The Leading Virtuously podcast. If you enjoyed the episode and the podcast, will you please subscribe on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify? Or you could also share it with a friend. That would be tubular. I hope you have an awesome day.